Hello viewers, Akzel here. Welcome to Akzel's Linux log. This has been very long overdue for quite some time. I was mentioning this like at the very latest a month ago, and then, well, and on Twitter a lot. I mentioned it on Twitter a lot, and with how much I mentioned it on Twitter, it's sad that this has taken this long. Anyway, this is my third technically, because I had a failed recording like 5 minutes ago because my audio is not being picked up for some reason. But anyway, it's funny because in that failed recording, I said I was going to try to avoid rambling as much as possible, and I've already started that. But anyway, the reason that this is like a re-record is because the first recording was like 40 minutes long, and I was having some issues with the video editor that I was trying out, which I'm going to get to that a little bit later in this part. But anyway, this is by far not a how-to series or a tutorial thing or anything like that. This is my first impressions, sort of, well, a recap of my impressions and a why I switched and all that kind of stuff, because I am still very much a noob to Linux. I have not delved into the advanced stuff or anything much at all yet. I'd like to learn more about it, but I'm not at that point yet, so we're just going to go. I was going to be talking about why I switched, what my current setup is, and what I like and dislike about it. Those are going to be the three things we're going over in this part. There's going to be more parts to this later, and when I say later, hopefully I can do better than Valve time. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, to get things started, we're going to start with why I decided to switch. Now, as many people are probably aware about Windows 10, which is what I was using before this, there are like a lot of privacy concerns and stuff, and there have been some places that have called it like spyware disguised as an operating system. But that's actually not why I switched. I had already thought about switching before I had really thoughts about the whole privacy concerns and stuff. The main reason I switched is because if there's anything that I love as much as games and gaming and all that good stuff, it's technology. Any and all sorts of technology, for the most part. Some exceptions, but most kinds of technology. Linux, of course, is very, very nice for tech-savvy people like me, or tech-enthusiastic people. Also like me, basically what I just said. So that was the main reason I wanted to switch. And actually, I don't know why it took me so long, actually, because like a while back I had briefly thought about trying it out a little bit. I briefly tried Ubuntu on a virtual machine a long time ago, but of course through that virtual machine it ran very slow, but it was still interesting at the time. And then it took me so long to actually really think about it. What really spurred my interest to try it finally was videos by Tech Syndicate, actually. You can find them on YouTube pretty easily. It's TEK Syndicate or Tech Linux, their Linux channel, which basically that is what finally sparked my interest a couple months ago to finally actually get into it, even though, well, their videos, the first video of it that I saw was like in November of last year, I think. Or wait, no, it was 11 months ago. It was like way longer ago than that. But anyway, that is what finally led to me deciding, like, you know what? I've been wanting to for a while, so I'm going to go and try this. And then a couple months later, here I am still diving into the wonderful world that is Linux. So that is why I switched. Now, I'm going to show you my current setup. So if we just switch over to a desktop view here, yeah, I got things set up all reasonably fancy this time. Not really that fancy. It's just typical OBS stuff, which I am using to record this, by the way. This is being recorded with Open Broadcast software, OBS Studio, because that's the only one that's available for Linux. The regular OBS is just Windows, but OBS Studio is multi-platform. It used to be called OBS multi-platform, then they changed it. Don't really mind that. Anyway, I got typical applications over here. The version of Linux that I'm using right now, or well, the distribution that I'm on. I'm debating how much stuff that I need to really explain here. Like since this is like a first impressions thing, kind of, even though I've been using it for like a couple months now. I still feel like maybe I should explain some stuff to the best of my knowledge, which might actually be a good idea, because then you guys can see like how much I actually know as opposed to how much I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to jump right into that. If I just type in details here, I am running Ubuntu GNOME 15.10. This only says Ubuntu, doesn't mention the GNOME part, which, before you ask, because I know there are plenty that will ask why I'm pronouncing GNOME weird. With the desktop environment, which is basically what you're seeing here, the graphical interface, Apparently that's supposed to be pronounced GNOME, but I also hear plenty of people saying no, it's supposed to be said GNOME. So it's like argued or something whether it's GNOME or GNOME. So if I say either of those, I'm referring to the same thing. Don't worry about that. Anyway, Ubuntu GNOME is an official flavor of Ubuntu, which is developed by Canonical, but then like the flavors of it are developed by the community. So Ubuntu GNOME is pretty nice because I like the GNOME desktop. I tend to do that as well. Like I'm calling it GNOME when I'm just saying it by itself. But if it's the desktop, I tend to say GNOME desktop instead of GNOME desktop. I don't know. I'll be interchanging between those quite a bit actually. So running Ubuntu 15.10, probably going to upgrade to 16.04 when that comes out because that's going to be a long-term release, and I didn't want to go with the 14.04 release because I'd briefly tried that, but the version of GNOME in that, for some reason, was not as nice to my multi-monitor setup. So, yeah, running 15.10 right now. But yeah, probably going to upgrade to 16.04. Hopefully that doesn't give me any problems. I don't think it will, but we'll see. Anyway, so we're running that, and again, I like in the original recording, I went into more explaining about like what a distribution is because I think I mentioned that a bit earlier, but I don't want to make this too explainy either. I don't know. You guys tell me. Anyway, the GNOME desktop by default comes with a file manager called Nautilus, or at least it used to be called Nautilus, according to Wikipedia. Yes, best source ever. It's not actually called that anymore, but I just keep calling it that anyway. So by default, this is the file manager you would have with it. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. I like to use Nemo, which is actually the default of the Cinnamon desktop, which comes with Linux Mint. Or it can come with Linux Mint. You get to choose that stuff, which is one of the great things about Linux is all the customizability, which is another one of the reasons I wanted to look into it, because it's like, this is so fucking customizable. It's amazing. But anyway, I got Nemo here on the right, Nautilus on the left. You can already see pretty big difference. Like, this doesn't even have a menu bar. Nautilus does not have a menu bar. Nemo does. These little bars here are showing the drive space, which is fantastic. I can just hover over and be like, oh, okay, that's how much I have. And then this one, that looks like it's pretty full, but I actually still have about 600 gigabytes open. So that's a 4 terabyte drive there. But it's still nice to see that indicator. So at a glance, it's like, oh, that's getting full. Maybe I should clear some stuff out, which I don't do very often because I am lazy. But yeah, another nice thing with Nemo is, as opposed to Nautilus, should I blur this stuff out at all? Because these are hidden files. I don't think these can be used against me, right? Probably not. No, because there wouldn't be any sensitive information like that. Anyway, if you right click here in Nautilus, you just got new folder, open in terminal, restore missing files, properties. There's like 5 options there. I think you can add more technically if you want to, but I haven't really looked into configuring Nautilus very much because Nemo out of the box just works so great. I can also just straight up create a new empty document, which is actually pretty useful for stuff because Linux does not like require file extensions and stuff like that. Because you can see a lot of folders here that are just like dot whatever, which normally in Windows would be a file extension, but it's not here. But anyway, I can open in terminal, open as root, which is super, super convenient because I can just do stuff with the file manager that I would normally not be as able to do as quickly and conveniently, because if I want to do that with like Nautilus, I'd have to open the terminal first and then do like sudo Nautilus. Yeah, so got that. I can also arrange items, all that good stuff. So Nemo just has a lot more features out of the box, and that's fucking fantastic. It's pretty great. Have to do some command line stuff or terminal stuff. Is command line still appropriate to refer to the Linux terminal? I feel like it's not, because that just feels like a Windows term. But yeah, the terminal, which I can open with Control-T, is a default thing. And I think that might just be an Ubuntu thing, because I've also played around with OpenSUSE a bit. Control-Alt-T does not do that. I don't know if that's the operating system itself or just the desktop environment that's deciding that, but in most Ubuntu-based ones I've tried, Control-Alt-T opens a terminal window. With GNOME here, there's also an extension, drop-down terminal, which is pretty nice, actually, if it would drop down. Sometimes it's really slow about it for some reason. Is it because I'm fucking recording this? I don't know. Let me try that again. I don't know. It's a bit, but like sometimes it doesn't like to pop down for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because of OBS recording this right now or what, but sometimes it doesn't like to pop down. But that's pretty convenient too. Not that you guys can see that, unfortunately, but just having a drop down trail just like drops down from the top of the screen. I don't know why I'm gesturing with my hand. You can't see it from that angle. Just dropping down and just being able to type stuff. Like, sure, I can just do a separate window, which I do like to do instead sometimes. But it's sometimes nice to just drop it down from the top and just work from it that way. Anyway, showed you the file manager. Next, we're going to go into just the applications that I'm using right now, just basic stuff. We got Firefox, of course. I'm actually using an email client, which I never had before, but like it was included by default with actually with most distributions that you download, they'll have an email client installed by default. I think that's sometimes more relevant to what desktop environment it uses, because like if you do KDE, for example, that has like its own separate thing, but I'm just using Thunderbird Mail. I think Ubuntu GNOME here actually came with something else like called Evolution, I think. Yeah, it uses Evolution instead, but I just went with Thunderbird Mail because that was the first one that I had used, and it's pretty nice, works decently well. And now technically it's possible to like import other email stuff into Gmail, but I actually don't mind having the web client because it's just sitting there on my desktop. I get a notification, this is a quick notification sound, just a little whenever I get a new email, and I can just have it just there. And it's pretty convenient. Pretty convenient, actually, just having all my inboxes, of which I only have 2, by the way. I don't even have that many. I just have 2. I just have my Gmail and my Yahoo, which my Yahoo is super old, and I use that for my less official stuff. But anyway, I'm not talking about porn, by the way, if that's what you were assuming when I said less official stuff like that. I'm not talking about like stuff like that, even though I probably get spam email about that crap all the time. I'm curious now. I haven't actually checked my Yahoo's spam stuff in forever since I'm using the email client, and that doesn't notify me about spam. And I typically got like at least 100 spam emails per day, and I would empty that out daily. But I haven't actually checked it in a couple of in pretty much since I started using the desktop web client, email client there. I wonder how many spam emails I have. Maybe I'll check later and let you guys know. Future self, when you're editing this, go check that and put the number on screen right here. Speaking of editing, I'll get into video editors later, actually, a little bit later. I got LibreOffice here. It's included by default with every distribution I've tried so far. I've only tried like the most popular ones. I've tried, Ubuntu, other flavors of Ubuntu, Linux Mint, which is pretty good, especially if you're coming from Windows. I also would recommend Ubuntu Mate, especially once they release the 16.04 version. They got some cool looking stuff. Very cool features, user-friendly features in that, so that's pretty nice. And like I mentioned earlier, I also tried a bit with OpenSUSE. I have that on my laptop right now, actually, trying to get things to work. I tried to install it on here at one point, had some problems, so I'll get more to that in the next part, which the next part is going to be an overview of my process up until now, like what all I've done, and then where I'm at now, and then what I'm going to do in the future. But that's going to be the next video. So I'm using LibreOffice. I also started using Evernote, but that's not a Linux specific thing, because the thing you have to remember about Linux is because it is much, much less used than Windows and stuff, it's actually not too far behind Mac, if I remember correctly. I think Mac is like 5% of personal computer users, whereas Linux is like around 2%, compared to Windows, which is like about 90 or something. I don't remember where I saw these numbers. It was probably Wikipedia again, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, so Linux is actually not too far behind Mac, but both of which are like way behind Windows, unfortunately. It's funny, like before I switched over to Linux, I was always like, yeah, I'd much rather have Windows than Mac for the win. That was like 90% because games. But now that I'm on Linux, it's like, dude, Even Mac seems like a better option than Windows, because at least that's mostly stable, or supposed to be. I've looked into some recent... Okay, focus. I said we're not going to ramble. We're not going to ramble. Also, I have GIMP on here, GIMP image editor. It's pretty nice. They actually, in this version, this is 2.8, they actually have a single window view, which I think that is a pretty recent addition, because I'm pretty sure I'm running... Yeah, it's 2.8 right now. That was introduced with version 2.8. I used GIMP years ago before, and it didn't have this. This is like a very new addition. Normally, by default, it used to be like this. Where'd my other dot go? Oh, it's on my other monitor. Ha, there it is. Yeah, so it used to be like something like this by default, but now they have single window mode, which is actually fantastic. They should have had this a long time ago. It just seems so much better to me. I can kind of see the advantage of not having it like this, but this video is not about GIMP, which is GNU Image Manipulation Program. I was trying to guess what it stood for before, and I was close. I said graphical image manipulation program instead of GNU, but I was close. As I mentioned before, we're using OBS to record this. Let's do some trippy shit here. Whoa, window within window within window within window. That's, yeah. Okay, so video editors. I am still looking for what video editor I want to use for this stuff. I was going to try Kdenlive. It seemed fine at first, but then I started having just random crashes, and it would not even let me add a video track, like an extra video track, without crashing. And it's... I don't know, because I hear people saying, like, the latest version of it, which actually, now that I think about it, I was not using the latest version. I was using the one in the Ubuntu repositories, which I remember being recommended against. Okay, that's probably my fault. I might give it another try now that I've realized that with the latest version. But either way, it was just weird crashes, so I might go back to try it again now that I've realized I'm an idiot. But the one I'm going to be trying for this take on this video, because I had it mostly edited too, except for other crap, and it was just, I don't know, I wanted to make it shorter and more coherent, even though we're already at about half the time as the other one was. But so far, this one doesn't need as much editing. Yay! Good job, me. Good job, OBS, because you just have that webcam view there automatically. Well, not automatically, because anyway, I'm going to be trying out Shotcuts. I would open it up. I don't know if that's going to make OBS poop. Well, probably not, because I don't have anything loaded in here. So Shotcut, it's not Linux exclusive. It is across, it goes across, like, I think all the platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it goes across all of them. It's actually quite nice, and with Linux especially, it integrates well with my desktop theme. As you can see, that's very similar to like what I had. Like the window itself is very much like my file managers, like Nemo there. So it integrates well with the desktop. That's pretty cool. Kdenlive only does so with KDE, which I need to. I technically have KDE installed on here just because I wanted to theme Kdenlive. I might remove that now, though, because I'm not sure if I'll go back to Kdenlive if Shotcut works out, but we'll see. I also tried out Blender for video editing, which it works. It's just kind of more like a Swiss Army knife than a chef's knife. Like, it can do it, and it can do it reasonably well, but you're probably better off and will be more comfortable with something that's meant for the purpose. So, like, don't slice fish with a Swiss Army knife. Slice it with a chef's knife. Fish was probably a bad example. I didn't say fillet the fish, though. I just said slice a fish. So, anyway, yeah, I'm going to be trying out Shotcut. I already like some of the features, and it actually has some pretty nice color grading tools. I've tried it out a little bit. But that's what I'm going to be trying next. I have also tried Blender. I think I have a picture on here of what that setup looked like, because I was actually using Blender for the, here's a picture right here. This is what Blender looks like when it's set up to properly video edit, if we just full screen that. So it looks like a video editor this way, but the controls for it are still the Blender controls, so they're different, and it's kind of weird, but it does work. But the thing is, it's also limited to 300,000 frames, which in the cases I was using was going for like, because I was at first really trying it out for like some of the stream archives. Like I know I used it for one of the Undertale ones. I also used it for the last Attack on Titan Sundays. Sorry, that's dead again. My bad. And also for the Firewatch stream archives, which didn't really require much editing, but that is the last thing that I used Blender for. But I wanted to try out a proper video editing software. But Blender is still nice, definitely, especially for the 3D modeling side of things. I have not tried out like compositing ever. I still don't even fully understand what compositing is, because I'm not exactly very learned in the ways of professional video production and that kind of thing. Maybe someday. I think, yeah, here is what the Firewatch stuff looked like. It's also kind of weird because I think, because like by default the audio is above the video and the waveforms aren't showing, and it's like, it's just weird. It does work, but it's weird. That's the best way to put it. I already mentioned I'm using OBS to record. Any other programs here? Of course I got Steam. Of course, not all games work on Linux, but the ones that do, they do work reasonably well, especially if they were built for Linux in the first place. I'm not sure where I was going with that sentence. Other random stuff. Of course, I got Firefox. Oh, right, screen cap stuff. If I hit print screen right now, you'll notice we got this. It's kind of weird looking, but I can do... Actually, I think OBS just... I don't know if it broke or not, because right now it is still for me. Hopefully you guys could see that. Just demonstrated Shutter, which I'm using as a replacement for Push. I don't know if you guys know what Push is. I think it might be popular. I don't know. I was shown it a long time ago. It's basically makes it... like, Push makes it easier to share screenshots with friends and stuff, because it's like... You can take a picture of either a screen region or whole desktop. It uploads it to their website, and you get a link, and you send it to your friends. Shutter is what I'm using instead of that now, because Push is not on Linux. So I'm using Shutter instead, which is a screen cap program. You can also do some minor edits or anything. I haven't really messed with the editing part of it, but it works well for what it is. I actually have it to where I have a shortcut to where it will, instead of doing the built-in screen cap stuff, I can just use print screen to instead open the screen region stuff with Shutter, which I like a lot. It might be possible to do something like that with Windows, but I don't know. Either way, I'm pretty sure it was a lot easier here with Linux, so that's fantastic. Or I should say Ubuntu, maybe GNOME specifically. I don't know. I'm going to say Ubuntu. So that's pretty nice. Other than that, package managers, I'll get more into that a little bit later. We got package managers here. By default, you got the Ubuntu Software Center. We just open that real quick. Basically, this is how you would get most of your programs and stuff with Ubuntu. There's some that you can still take the typical Windows route of going to the people's websites, but it's still kind of handled the same way, because a lot of the times they're still installed like through the package manager. In this case, Ubuntu Software Center, which is actually getting replaced in Ubuntu 16.04. Not sure what Ubuntu GNOME's going to do about that, but I guess I'll find out eventually. So that's the thing. I also like... Synaptic Package Manager for when I need to find a specific package and don't feel like going through the command line, because it just lets me actually see information on it more easily. So, for example, if we wanted to just say Blender, which I already have installed, of course, you would find all this stuff, and it's like, oh, look, that's Blender. That's fantastic. And you can just install it from here very easily. With Ubuntu Software Center, you search it. There's just an install button. So Software Center is more user-friendly. Synaptic Package Manager is a bit more... when you're looking for a specific package, like if you need it as a dependency for something else or something like that. Not that you usually need to worry about that with Linux, but sometimes stuff is weird. So I use both for different reasons, but I do use both. Also, we got Pulse Audio Volume Control. I would open that right now, but sometimes when I open that, it messes with my audio stuff for some reason. Basically, that is one piece of the solution of me fixing my audio issues I've had with Linux, which I'm going to have an entire video dedicated to my audio adventure with Linux, because, oh my god, it took me so long to get things set up similarly to how I have things on, or had things, well, okay, have, because I still have that installed, to how I have things on Windows. And it turned out it was a lot easier than I was making it out to be, but it was still just annoying, like what I did have to go through, because I had to search very specific stuff on Google. I had to know what to search for. And because if you're too vague with it, since Linux is not as widely used as Windows, it's going to be harder to find the answer to what you're looking for. I also tend to never look past the first page of Google, so that might have helped a little bit, but I'm lazy, and I usually just change my search terms before I go to the second page or further of Google. But yeah, pulse audio volume control, very nice, because I can just on the fly change what an audio source is outputting to, so I can very easily change it from my headphones to my monitor speakers or something else. So it's very handy for that. And I think that's it for applications so far. So we're going to now go into what I like and dislike so far. One of the main things that I very much like about Linux over Windows, especially Windows 10 so far, is that it's just faster. Like, my computer is by no means slow. It's got an i7 4770K GTX 980 Ti graphics card, 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's not a slow system at all, but on Windows 10, like, it's not slow per se, but whenever there's just the slightest bit of a hiccup or whatever, it's noticeable on Windows. Like, it's not really slow, but it's noticeably not as fast as, like, any of the Linux distributions I've tried. Although, as far as desktops go, I've mostly just tried GNOME and Linux Mint Cinnamon, and then Unity. Unity is the default on regular Ubuntu, by the way, which a lot of people hate it. I don't hate it, but it is definitely not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination. So probably one of my least favorites, but I don't hate it necessarily. Right, it also boots up a lot faster than Windows. Just in general starts up, even with like next to no programs starting up with Windows. This just boots up so much faster, and it's so nice. So very nice. And other than that, as I was talking about a little bit earlier with Linux, you get so many options for customization. It is like a dream come true for me, because I can just do whatever the hell I want. Which, speaking of that, the GNOME desktop here was one of the first ones that I tried out, and I was like, oh my god, I can tweak quite a bit of things here, and it's pretty awesome. Then, as I also mentioned earlier, I got OpenSUSE on my laptop over there, and I decided to also use the KDE desktop, and I realized there is so many customization options with KDE, so many more than I had with GNOME. I can even make it look like GNOME if I want to. So, yeah, I'm definitely reconsidering my stance there. It's definitely too early to pick my favorite desktop environment. I do like GNOME because it's simple, but it's still customizable enough to where it keeps me happy. But I'm definitely going to give KDE more of a try. I don't know if it's KDE itself or just something with my laptop being slow, but it's kind of glitchy on my laptop. So, yeah, for my laptop, which is an old laptop, kind of, it was like back from when I was in high school in 2012, 2011 and 2012, I'm probably going to put Ubuntu Mate on that again as soon as the 16.04 version comes out, because that just looks great, and I had it on there before, and things were great. I just wanted to try out OpenSUSE, because that was fun. Yeah. The other thing that I like about Linux, just in general, is just how software is handled. Because unlike with Windows, where the only way really until they introduced the Windows Store, which doesn't even have like everything you would want, that's more of like that just feels more like a mobile-oriented thing there. But with Linux, you have similar things, but they're called software repositories, which are accessed through like your package manager or whatever. But you can also get from and mess around with through the command to the terminal. You can do everything to the terminal. The graphical stuff obviously makes it more user friendly though. So I usually try to just use the graphical stuff, but there are definitely things that are faster to just do through the terminal. But anyway, with like packages, package management and stuff, as opposed to Windows, where when you install a program and then like uninstall it later, there's like almost always stuff left behind. Linux does things very cleanly. Son of a bitch. Sorry about that. My camera goes to sleep because battery saving and stuff. It used to do that every 10 minutes, then I found the setting, but I could only increase that to every 30 minutes. So I was hoping we could get through this video without that happening, but I've been rambling too much again. But yeah, so packages on Linux are really nice because, and especially the package managers for the most part, as far as I know, when it installs a package, it keeps track of everything it did when installing it. So then when you remove it, the only things that might be left over are just like your settings and configuration files and stuff. None of the actual package stuff. It's just the stuff that was like settings for it. So if you go back and install it again later, you should still have all your settings, as far as I know. Might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it leaves the configuration files and whatnot. And that's it. It's otherwise a clean uninstall. And that's pretty nice. And the repositories, the software repositories, each distribution maintains a set of software repositories, and then they just like maintain the packages in those repositories and like just keep them maintained and use ones that are somewhat up to date for that distribution. Not usually the most up to date unless you're running something like Fedora or OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, but they're relatively up to date. And some distributions like Debian just like run much older but a hell of a lot more stable packages, which can be nice. So yeah. As for what I dislike about Linux so far, there's not a lot. There is not a lot. The biggest thing that I dislike is as a result of the fact that Linux is not as widely used as Windows, and that is that most games are not made for Linux, and most applications are not on Linux. The games part is much more important to me. The applications part is semi-important because, I gotta be honest, I really miss just using Premiere because it was really nice to use, and I have yet to find an editor on Linux that is even somewhat as nice to use. Like Kdenlive was not bad. I just wish it wasn't as crashy for me, but again, I'll have to try the latest version of that or something. And then Shotcut, I haven't really messed around with it too much yet. But when I have a longer file, it's really slow with zooming in and out for some reason and scrubbing along. I'm not really sure why. It's mostly the zooming in and out on the audio tracks with Shotcut. I don't know why it's like that, because Kdenlive handled that just fine. So, still looking for a good video editing software, but other than the lack of support by applications and by game development and stuff, which hopefully will be improving thanks to the Vulkan API, and Valve's efforts, which they really should I think they need to do some improvements for SteamOS, because I've heard that there's some problems, and apparently a lot of games that are on both stuff don't run better on SteamOS, unfortunately. But hopefully that situation gets better. It is steadily getting better for Linux. Hopefully it continues to get better for Linux, because I want to see better game support, better application support, and that kind of stuff. And then the application support thing kind of ties into the audio issues I was mentioning earlier. That's going to have its own separate thing, but not so much, because I did find an answer for it, but I feel like the answer that I found was definitely more workaround than solution. So I don't know. We'll just see how that kind of thing goes. Other than that, as a whole, I love Linux. It's awesome. Windows was more of a necessity. Linux is more of a pleasure to use. So it's great. And that's about all that I have to say for this introduction video / setup / what I liked and disliked. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. And if you guys like this and want to see more of this stuff, even though I'll probably still make more anyway because I want to talk about this stuff, make sure to leave a like, consider subscribing, all that good stuff. Till next time, this has been Akzel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.